Okay, well, a robust developer community, is a community that incorporates a lot of different geographical areas. One that is interested in what your product offers. And they're interested in helping to not only use what you have, but also help drive the features and the various things that people want to do with your product. So, not only will you get things like, this is broken, I need this fixed, you also get, it would be good if you did XYZ, if you did ABC, and help to kind of push forward and provide feedback over your overall product.
Second stab. I'll add to that. Sure. I think that a good, robust community offers opportunities for participation at every level of participation. So, for example, in the Firefox community, you can participate if you have 35 seconds, because when Firefox crashes, some people will just say, yeah, I was doing this when it crashed, and that's the extent of their participation. Some people will test and use extensions on different platforms and provide bug reports. Some people will write extensions and build them and help them get popular, and some people will contribute core code to Firefox itself, right? So just as an example, a robust community has opportunities for participation for a large variety of people with different amounts of time and skills, I think is a really important part of a developer community.
Greg, what about internally?
Well, internally, I think it's about providing an environment where people feel comfortable sharing. A lot of times in an enterprise, you get these silos and protection of knowledge. We actually had 9 different development communities at Alcatel-Lucent that were all developing soft switches. And so much of that code could be reused, and we could probably get down to 1. But without a robust environment where people feel comfortable in sharing what they're working on, these types of things tend to happen in a large company.
So some big VC in New York said API is the new biz dev, and that's probably kind of true. So to me, a robust community means that developers are using your stuff, using your systems in some way, and that you've exposed it. And if they're not using it, the community, by definition, isn't robust.
I think it's interesting to point out that there are a lot of different kinds of developer communities. There's the open source developer community where you have a bunch of developers working on the same code, where SCM is really important. You have the extension community where people are working on things that relate to a product. They're building new connectors or that sort of thing. There's the App Store community, completely different, building apps on top of a platform. An App Store community might need ratings and reviews and top applications and all sorts of things that an open source community doesn't need. It's kind of funny. What ties all the community managers in the world together is the same understanding of psychology, but the tools are totally different.
No one really realizes that developers have to be paid for their time, and the way you are paying them is by giving them your APIs, your software, whatever it is. Developers are a cynical, cheap bunch, and the race, the competition for developers is in high gear right now. And the way you pay them is by giving them stuff. And even if you give it to them, they're not likely to review your software, to use it, etc. So you're basically subsidizing trials of your product in some way.
Let me. I know we're out of order. Let me jump in on this because I have a different conclusion. My big lesson in community management is that developers may be all those things, but ultimately they're people like you and me, and they do reasonable things with common sense, right? And so that was my biggest shock, is realizing, man, I'm a community manager, and what is my skill? I understand the world around me, and I do what makes sense. Like, that's it. There's not a whole lot else more to it, So I think that understanding the audience is part of it, but then understanding that it's just people.
Yeah, and I played it up a little bit. But
I know, we're not really disagreeing here, but this is the drama of the panel, right?
Mitch, what's the one secret that you've learned?
Well, that the
developers are simple.
Developers are always right.
The developer is always right.
Oh, sure. When they come in and they, they'll post questions or they'll have a problem, and you have to be open to what they're saying. You can't just come and bash what they're, say, oh, you're completely wrong, and then shoot them out the door. You have to be patient. You have to take what they're saying and see from their perspective. How are they using it? What is wrong maybe with the process that is causing them to have problems? I think so. So, when a user comes in, they don't think they're right, but they're coming in and saying, I have this problem, this has to be fixed, or something like that.
Greg?
I think it's basically be an instigator. Don't be afraid to talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room. When there's an issue in the community, that you don't want to talk about, it can be devastating to a community. So it always pays to get those kind of unspoken issues out in the open so that you can talk about them. And in the end, use strong opinions to start conversations, but be open to changing your opinion based on input from the community.